Steeler Nation, what is going on? Thank you guys so very much for tuning in for yet another edition of the Steeler Culture Podcast, where we break down Pittsburgh Steelers football. This edition is powered by our friends over at BetUS Sportsbook and Casino, and today we decide to discuss the remaining 6 games for the Pittsburgh Steelers as we are leading in towards Week 13, and the remaining stretch for the Steelers schedule is a tough one.
Yes, this stretch of the schedule is at its peak. It doesn't get any tougher for the rest of the season, which begs the question, just how real are the Pittsburgh Steelers, man? This is a true, real test for our Pittsburgh Steelers, man. But we want to thank you guys for tuning in. Happy Thanksgiving. We got a Thanksgiving upload for you guys. We wish you guys a phenomenal Thanksgiving full of fun times and family. Please cherish the family time. Eat as much as you can. Happy Thanksgiving, you guys. But I want to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video. Shout out to BetUS Sportsbook and Casino. As you guys know, man, Thanksgiving is full of food, fun, family, and of course,
Football.
Today,
I love some football.
we got some football, man. We got 3 exciting NFL games today. Some are more exciting than the others. But first, we got a noon 30 game. We got the Chicago Bears at the Detroit Lions, man. They got all of the betting lines here for the Thursday games, as well as all of the Week 13 battles here, including the Steelers versus Bengals, man. But in regards to today, in regards to Thursday, we're going to look at the prop build that they have. And one of the things I like to bet on a lot is the anytime touchdowns, because that's very stressful and fun. So we're going to look at the Bears and the Lions, man. I think Gibbs scores. I think that's a lock, in my opinion.
Oh, without a doubt.
I think Jahmyr Gibbs scores. Now we're going to look at the Giants and the Cowboys. Now, I'm torn, and I'm going to leave the option to Rob here. CD or Tracy? It could be neighbors, especially with Drew Lock starting. But who do you think scores
You
a
got
touchdown?
to go CD. Divisional matchup, and the Cowboys, they're coming off a big win against Commanders. And honestly, like, there's nobody else on that offense to score other than CD. Let's be real here. So I think you got to go with the obvious.
All right, we're going to go CD. And we got the Dolphins and Packers, which is definitely the most exciting game of Thursday, of Thanksgiving. And if any of us are not in food comas, we can all watch an exciting Thursday night football game, man. Who do you think scores a touchdown here? Now, this could be one of the more high scoring. So do we want to add an extra? There's Jacobs, there's Achen, there's Reed, there's Hill, obviously.
Yeah, of course. I mean, for me personally, I think I would have to go with Jacobs. The man had 3 touchdowns this past Sunday, and I think that they had to continue with that trend. I mean, Jacobs has just been one hell of an addition for Green Bay in that rushing offense and just getting points on the board in general. I don't see how they slow down Jacobs' momentum one bit.
Right. I'm also going to go with Tyreek Hill. I'm going to go with my personal pick. I'm going to go with Tyreek here. And as you guys see, man, that's a 4-bet slip for anytime touchdowns. A little bit too much to ask for, but honestly, man, things could happen today. So we're going to put all that into a parlay plus 1,200 to 1 odds. Let's put 10 on it. We could walk away with 1,300 right there. So honestly, I feel like that's a good bet. Actually, you know what? Let's lower it. Let's lower it to like $8. $8 just to be a little safe here. So we're going to confirm that. If you guys want to tell that, feel free to do so at betus.com. Shout out to them. Take advantage of 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,000 and 125% on your next 2 deposits when you use the promo code YouTube150 when signing up at betus.com today, and take advantage of all the great perks from our great friends over at BetUS Sportsbook and Casino, including that promo code, the fastest payouts in the industry, fast and easy deposit withdrawal process, live wagering on all major sports, including all of the Week 13 games, man. So I want to thank BetUS for sponsoring with us on this video. Just please gamble responsibly. Now, the topic of this video is the remaining schedule for the Steelers, man. As you see, we got the Bengals this upcoming week, then we got the Browns again, then the Eagles, then the Ravens and the Chiefs. Those 3 games from Week 15 and 17 are all in a 10-day span, and we close out the season with the Bengals, man. This stretch of the schedule doesn't get any tougher. It's at its peak. So now you see the Steelers, man, they're sitting at 8-3 right now, which is a very good record. That's a very good record. It's the best we've had at this time of the year in quite a while. So can't take anything away from the Steelers team. Can't take anything away from what they've accomplished and how they've won games. But this is now the real test for the Steelers, man. This is where the questions are really asked. How good are the Steelers? How legit are the Pittsburgh Steelers, man? What type of team are we going to get for this bottom half of the season? Because this is a tough schedule, and it all starts this Sunday versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And I feel like that's a very important game because it's already bad enough the Steelers lost to the Browns.
Yeah, although they started off fine, off the bye week, 2 straight wins against the Commanders and the Ravens. They did lose on a short week to Cleveland and in devastating fashion. And it was a hurtful loss right there. And the Ravens, they got a big win the past number of weeks, the past 2 games since losing to the Steelers. And now they're still within a game's reach of being first place in the AFC North division.
They are. And why I say that the Bengals is very important is because the Ravens have already swept the Bengals. They had 2 of the most high-scoring matchups probably in their 2 matchups history, and the Ravens came out victorious in both of those matchups. They already faced and they already swept the Bengals. So now it is the Steelers' turn. They cannot risk losing to any of the AFC North teams, but especially the Bengals right now, because the Ravens, man, they face the Eagles, and if there's any team to compete with the Eagles right now, it is the Ravens. You got 2 of the best running backs in the league on their new teams just having incredible years, offensive player of the year candidates, honestly.
Yeah.
So they can compete with the Eagles. So I would say the Ravens have a legitimate chance to beat the Eagles, and if the Steelers lose to the Bengals this week, that puts the Ravens in first place.
Just like that.
Just like that.
And we just beat the Ravens not too long ago.
So this
for
is
first place of the division. And just like that, the Steelers could lose because of losses to Ohio teams.
Yes.
It would be devastating. It would be hurtful.
2 straight losses in Ohio, man. I don't know when was the last time the Steelers ever had that happen to them, because typically the Steelers in Ohio, it's almost like another Pittsburgh, because they're just so victorious. They have such a winning record in that area, no matter if it's the Browns, no matter if it's the Bengals, but they already lost to the Browns last week in Cleveland, their 3rd straight year losing in Cleveland nonetheless.
Yeah.
So they can't go in versus the Bengals and losing, and then they got the Browns after that again, and the Browns have already beat us once. I don't want to sleep on the Browns, because even the Browns beat the Ravens. Like, the Browns, this is just AFC North football in a nutshell. That's just how AFC North football is. It is the best divisional football in all of the National Football League. It's tough, it's competitive, and anyone can win it at a moment's stance. And it sucks because the loss last week, the Steelers, man, they came back from a deficit again, like we've seen in weeks past. And that's how they've won games, especially versus the Commanders and the Ravens. They came back from a deficit. They had the lead. And props to the defense for giving them a favor with the Dante Jackson interception. The offense just couldn't close the game out.
No, they couldn't.
So that was a rough loss, and they can't go into the Bengals in Cincinnati and lose another AFC North matchup, especially with how the Ravens are just hot right now, and they could be the number 1 seed of the AFC again. There's a high chance of that. But obviously after the Bengals and the Browns, we have the Eagles. Now, this may not mean too much, but honestly, I look at it as, yeah, it's a non-conference game. It might not mean a lot in the grand scheme of things. But the way I see it is the Ravens face the Eagles this week. If they beat the Eagles and we lose to the Eagles, I think that plays a huge effect in the division.
I believe it does as well. Yeah.
I think it does, especially since any win at this point with how close those 2 teams are, anyone could get the lead at any moment, at any week, honestly. It could be a flip-flopping of who gets first place throughout the week. So we got the Eagles then, and then we got the Ravens a couple days later on that Saturday, right before Christmas. Now, we already beat the Ravens, and I feel very confident that we can sweep them again, because the Ravens, man, they can't beat us.
No.
Now, I know that is in Baltimore, but still, I like our history against I like our history against Baltimore.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I think it's been a good bit since Baltimore's actually won against the Steelers in their home stadium too. So the Steelers definitely have their number there for sure.
Yes.
And it's just, Lamar against the Ravens, it's just like we are Lamar's kryptonite. The Steelers are.
Yeah, the Steelers have proved that time and time again, especially when they're fully healthy. And we'll have Alex Highsmith back for that game as well, so that's going to be huge. So then we got the Chiefs.
Yeah. On Christmas Day. And that is in Pittsburgh. That is at home, but we're talking about the Eagles, the Ravens, and the Chiefs in a span of 10 days.
Yes.
That is a devastating schedule right there. That is tough.
Yeah, I don't favor the NFL. I don't thank the NFL for giving the Steelers that rough hand, especially towards the end stretch of the season, but that's the hand we've been dealt with.
And it's just a matter of how the Steelers are going to prep in said amount of days.
How are they going to approach that? And thankfully, knock on wood, this team is as healthy as it could ever be at this stage of the season. And it's been a while since they've been this healthy, especially on the defensive side of the football. So perhaps that's a good thing for that stretch, and hopefully they come out as healthy as they can, because that's what's most important out of all these games, And then, of course, they close the season against the Cincinnati. Lord knows what the record's going to be. Lord knows what the standings are going to become Week 18 versus Cincinnati, which is obviously the home ender for the Steelers of the regular season. So I want to give a quick prediction here.
Okay.
Like a quick little record prediction of how many games I think the Steelers are going to win. I think we beat Cincinnati because I think it's important. I think the Steelers understand that.
Yeah.
I think we beat Cleveland because I just cannot stand the fact or the idea of Cleveland sweeping us.
No. No.
Especially in Pittsburgh.
I don't see that happening either. No.
Especially in Pittsburgh. So we get 2 straight wins against the Bengals and the Browns, which keeps us atop of the AFC North. Because the more the Steelers win, the better chance they stand at staying at top. It's as simple as you keep winning and you stay atop. You can't give the Ravens any chance of getting that crown back. So I think we beat the Browns, or we beat the Bengals, then we beat the Browns. Eagles, I think that's a loss because we just don't have a good history against the Eagles, especially in Philadelphia.
Yeah, and the Eagles are just hot right now, especially that offense and Saquon doing what he's doing. It's just the Phillies on a different level right now.
I think we beat Baltimore.
Okay.
I think we sweep Baltimore. I just love our history there, and you always got to favor the Steelers in those matchups.
Yeah.
So we're looking at 9-3 versus the Bengals, 10-3 versus the Browns. We're looking at 10-4 versus the Eagles.
Then we're looking at 11-4 versus Baltimore.
And I think we lose against Kansas City because every time Patrick Mahomes has faced us, it's essentially been a blowout.
Yeah.
And I'm one that likes to look at history and favor that a lot. So I don't know if the Steelers still stand a chance against Kansas City, especially Andy Reid, because Mike Tomlin and the Steelers are always unprepped. They are always out-coached in those games. Even though it's in Pittsburgh, it's just their history against Kansas City is just not strong. Now, if there's a Steelers team to beat this Kansas City team, it could be this year's Steelers because I still feel this is a different Steelers team. I think this is one of the more stronger Steelers teams we've seen in quite a minute, probably since 2020. If you want to go farther than that, probably 2017. But I'm still going to go with a loss here, so that's going to be a record of
11-5. So that would
11-5.
be Week 17 would be 11-5.
And I think we beat the Bengals. I think we sweep the Bengals because I think that's very important when it comes to the AFC North because the Ravens already have. Now it's the Steelers' turn.
Yeah.
So that would put the Steelers at 12-5 for the rest of the season. Definitely first in the AFC North, and I don't know where that would clinch us in seeding. That would probably give us maybe the number 2 or 3 seed because if the Chiefs beat us, and the Chiefs are always just going to find ways to win, the Chiefs will probably be the number 1 seed. The Steelers will probably finish number 2 or 3, depending on Buffalo's record.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even Baltimore at that with the division rankings because the next 6 games are without a doubt the most important for the Steelers right here to prove themselves if they are legitimate or a legitimate team, legitimate contenders. But I would argue that the next 3 games against Cincinnati, Cleveland, and Philly, leading up to that second matchup between Baltimore on that Saturday, December 21st, these next 3 games are really going to be extremely crucial for the Steelers to live up to the talent basis and live up to the coaching basis of what they need to do to go out there and perform and win.
I agree because, again, the Ravens already swept the Bengals, so a loss to the Bengals would do absolutely no favors for the Steelers, and it would be very detrimental where they stand right now. They can't lose to the Bengals and give the Ravens any chance to get in that first place.
No.
So the more they win in the next 3 weeks, the better because then that week 16 game versus Baltimore could very well just be for first place. Because at that point, if the Ravens keep winning and the Steelers keep winning, then it could be one of those situations where whoever wins gets first place.
Right.
And then we're on to a hell of a race towards the end of the season, the last couple weeks. So I agree. The next 3 weeks are very important because, again, the Steelers need to beat Baltimore. The Ravens already swept them. They can't be swept by Cleveland. They can't. And, again, Philly, the Ravens face Philly. We face Philly. I think that's going to play an effect in where we stand.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I agree. The next 3 games are very important.
And Sunday's going to be important because, again, Steelers got Cincinnati at 1 o'clock in the 4:25 game, Eastern Standard Time, is the Baltimore and Ravens game. So that Sunday is going to be must-see football between those 2 football teams for the division standings right there alone.
And one of the things I want to mention real quick is, again, the Browns. I don't want to take anything away from them. They're awful. I agree with what George Pickens said. Okay, maybe it wasn't the right time to say it, but the Browns aren't as good. But they're
not a good football team.
But they beat us.
They did.
And they beat Baltimore. The Ravens faced the Browns in Week 18, the last game of the season.
Yeah.
We're getting all AFC North football comes Week 18. It'll be the Steelers versus Bengals and the Browns versus Ravens. If we beat the Browns at least once at home, and the Browns sweep the Ravens, that gives us a great chance of clinching the number 1 seed.
Big
or
chance.
the number 1 spot in the AFC North.
Yeah.
Maybe potentially the number 1 seed, depending on what we do against the Chiefs. But the reason we say all this is because what Steelers team are we really going to get? We know how grueling the schedule is. Now we want to look at the team itself. This Steelers team needs to step up. They still have a lot of issues. They're 8-3. I'm proud they're 8-3. A lot of these wins I'm very proud of. I get a sense that this team is different. In certain games where they were down by certain deficits, I know for a fact in previous Steelers teams, they were not going to come back from that.
No, I just look at last year alone. I mean, they were down by 2 touchdowns, and the offense specifically is just not prepped to come back from big deficits whatsoever. They're just not prepped to do so. They're not prepped. They don't have the right plays. They don't have anything, not the right mentality whatsoever to look at that and be like, okay, let's bounce back. Let's get back in this game. No, they had no desire of doing that.
No, they gave up.
This year, they absolutely have that mentality. They have the mentality of let's bounce back. We can still win this football game. It's not out of reach,
No. And to think, they had 3 very good wins before the bye versus the Raiders, versus the Jets, and the Giants, obviously. And then coming out of the bye, they had a comeback victory, a 10-point deficit versus the Commanders. They were down 7-6 before halftime, and then Patrick Queen made a hell of a play, and the Ravens never got the lead back after the Boz field goal.
Yeah.
And then they did come back versus Cleveland. They were down a certain deficit, and they came back. They just couldn't finish the game.
Yeah, I believe it was 18-16 or 18-6, something like that. And, yeah, the Steelers immediately, quickly capitalized off 2 touchdowns.
So, although last week was a rough loss, it still leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And I feel like the Steelers were still too aggressive. I don't want to sound contradicting because we've been begging the Steelers to get aggressive in certain situations. I just feel like they got too aggressive where they went for 4th down or fourth and short a little too often. They only converted 1 of 3. And then on that 3rd down when they brought Justin Fields in, it was defensive pass interference. Absolutely. I thought Justin Fields put the ball where it needed to be. But in that situation, just get the easy yardage and kill the clock.
Right.
I thought they just got a little too aggressive. And I feel like the team overall, the offense didn't take advantage. They were awful in the red zone when they barely even got there either. They still struggled to get points on the board consistently. Get points off of turnovers consistently. And the defense is still good. It's just these chunk plays and what they've been allowing to the receivers and the running backs is just a little sus, especially in the ground game. They've allowed what? I believe, how many rushing touchdowns the past couple of weeks? I know they allowed 3 last week.
Yeah.
So that is some suspect. So this I want to start with the defense. The defense definitely needs to step it up. I think it starts with coaching. Terrell Austin needs to step it up because I feel like him and what he's been doing with the defense has been a little too basic. The Steelers can win with rushing 4. They're very successful, but what we saw against Cleveland was just very underwhelming because, we know what the Browns O-line is. We know what T.J. Watt can do, and T.J. Watt was a non-factor. Nick Herbert got the only sack in that game.
Yeah, only sack. Only 1 sack against that Browns offensive line.
There was no pressure from nobody. So the pressure from the players definitely needs to be there. But I feel like in a sense, when the front 4 or whatever they throw at the O-line, at the quarterback, if it's not finding success, Terrell Austin needs to find ways to be able to open it up and get pressure to the quarterback, which means more blitz packages or, dare I say, moving certain players around. That includes T.J. Watt. I think one of the reasons why T.J. Watt was a non-factor versus the Browns is because he is primarily and only on that left side. Now, that's not entirely a bad thing because he's made a Hall of Fame career of being on that side alone without having to be moved around like Bosa or like Garrett or like all these other pass rushers, right? But I feel like moving T.J. Watt would be a huge positive to the team, especially if they're not finding success early in the game.
Well, it's just a matter of, if Watt's not doing anything in that one spot, it may not be anything from T.J. Watt's play. It's just the fact that teams have figured out how to limit Watt with chip blocks or double teaming him or triple teaming him on that one spot. That's where Austin and his coaching, that's where he has to adjust. And that's where he has to get better at.
Agreed.
That's where he's got to have to move J.J. Watt around, move Nick Herbig around, Alex Highsmith when he comes back. Move your pass rushers around because they're so versatile and dominant when it comes to getting pressure.
Or
if you move them around, that's where the offense and their coaching, that's where they're going to have to adjust. And that's where they're going to have to audible and figure out, how to limit TJ Watt and the other pass rushers. If they can't, then that's where the defense and the pass rush can easily eat.
Especially if, look at our depth at edge. We got 4 really good starter-worthy edge guys.
TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, and a newbie in Preston Smith.
I truly believe that. What's his name? Terrell Austin needs to be able to put all 3 or any figuration of those 4 or 3 on the field as much as possible. When Highsmith gets back, still play Herbig. Herbig's a dog. You know, when Herbig isn't being subbed in and Smith is, get Smith on the field. He can play interior.
Yeah, you can.
He's like that DeMarvin Leal replacement since Leal's out for the season. Get him going interiorly. There's ways where we can still get pressure, even in blitz packages. I think we got to blitz the linebackers a little more. I think we got to blitz Beanie Bishop a little more. Blitz Deshaun Elliott a little more. I think we have the numbers to be able to get pressure, and we got the guys in the secondary to still step up when we want to blitz the quarterback.
Yeah.
And even the secondary needs to step up. JPJ hasn't had a good couple of weeks. He got
torched.
Smoked versus the Commanders. And last week, man, Jerry Jeudy had himself a good game against JPJ.
I mean, dude, I think every pass Jeudy was targeted with, he caught. I don't think Jeudy missed a catch whatsoever. I mean, Jeudy was just going all over JPJ. Like, it was not the best day for JPJ.
No.
At all.
So JPJ, man, I still feel like he has lockdown potential. But last couple of weeks, man, I don't know if it's coaching. I don't know if it's him kind of slimming down a little bit. But JPJ is definitely going to have to step up because, you know, he's the number one. He's going to be relied a lot on, especially when you look at the teams that we're facing. You look at the Bengals specifically.
Jamar Chase. The guy leads the NFL in receiving yards, I think receiving touchdowns as well. He's just lighting the league on fire, burning every defensive back he's going up against.
You got A.J. Brown coming up. I mean, you got all these other receivers.
DeAndre Hopkins, where he's, you know, connecting with Patrick Mahomes week by week. You know what I'm saying?
Right. So JPJ is definitely going to have to step it up. Dante Jackson himself. He's had himself a good season. But he himself has allowed some catches and blown coverage. Minka Fitzpatrick, I think, is having a solid year, but even when he is lined up against tight ends, he's getting blown up in coverage. So the secondary guys need to step it up. Like this blown coverage or the missed assignments or just either of these guys in man coverage not following their guys, they got to step it up. This entire defense, man, from coaching and from everybody, they got to clean up the problems. They got to clean up the mishaps because we're about to face some of the more lightning offenses in the league.
Yeah, and especially passing-wise, you know, I feel like, you know, the players, you know, with their assignments, they have to make plays and whatnot, but I also feel that they've played a lot of soft coverage, a lot of more zoned and man. I feel like they should be doing a lot more man, especially with a guy like JPJ.
Absolutely.
Who's more of a man press coverage guy than a zone. We know that zone is his worst trait, so why are we doing a lot of zone?
Yeah, he needs to be able to play at his strengths, man. Let him get up in his face, let him get physical, let him play that man coverage.
And the secondary, yeah, it's just they have just not been as locked down as they initially were to start the season. Remember earlier in the season where, you know, like nobody was passing or getting through the secondary, whatnot. Jackson and JPJ, you know, they were just locked down guys.
Yeah, it was
that could have been a testament to, you know, offenses figuring out how to get through that and how to adjust and just play better.
Well, you look
coach better.
You look at the first 3 games. It was Atlanta, Denver, and the Chargers.
Yeah.
And those 3 teams are still pretty solid right now. You see Denver and what Bo Nix is doing. You see what the Chargers are doing with Justin Herbert. Atlanta's kind of having themselves a little bit of a bad stretch right now, but you know what Kirk Cousins can. It's like those guys are still trying to figure things out, and the Steelers defense played strong in those first 3 weeks. Then we had the Colts with Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco torched us, and ever since then, they've kind of had that inconsistency factor in the secondary. Things got to get cleaned up.
That's where the defense, the players, and the coaching, that's where they got to find their mojo. That's where they got to have to find their groove back, you know, that they had within the first 3 weeks.
And the same thing can be said for the offense. The offense definitely needs to play better. First of all, they got to be stronger in the red zone.
Well, I want to start with the positives. Like, there is a difference with the offense compared to previous years. Like, we know bad offense, right? We lived through it for 3 years.
Yes.
They are getting more yardage. You know, we're seeing a lot more chunk plays. We've seen better usage of George Pickens and his route tree. We're seeing, you know, Najee, you know, though he's kind of regressed the past 3 weeks since off the bye, but, you know, the start that he had in the first half of the season, like, you know, Najee was just running harder and he was more, you know, chippy and whatnot, if you know what I'm saying.
Right.
You know,
and Warren's having himself a very good past 3 weeks.
And they've been winning more time of possession. You know, like, there is positive with the offense. There is a difference with the offense.
And the offense has shown the ability of getting points on the board.
And coming from behind.
With 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. You got to give props to them.
I want to throw the positives out there before we get into, the nitty-gritty of what is the problem with the offense is the fact that their red zone efficiency, what are they? I think 30th in the NFL currently.
Well, they were 30th heading into Cleveland. I don't know if that's changed since, but 30th is not good.
And I believe that the percentage-wise, now they still got 6 games left to up the percentage. Hopefully they do so. But as of right now, their red zone percentage is actually down from last year. Believe it or not.
Yeah, and the past couple of years, our red zone efficiency has gotten worse and worse and worse. With Matt Canada, it got worse and worse. And now as we stand with Arthur Smith, our red zone efficiency is even worse than that. How is that possible?
I don't know. We're getting the yardage. We're seeing the plays. Like you see them, like before they get past the 50, they're making the plays. They're making, the necessary plays to get down the field. But as soon as they get past the 50, it's like everything comes to a halt.
It's like
they just stop. Like they have no idea what they're doing anymore.
Yeah, it's like they don't know how to act anymore. It's weird.
It's like they just forget how to play football. I don't understand what the issue is when they get past the 50 or when they get into red zone territory.
And I put a lot of that on Arthur Smith because, his red zone offense, his red zone history, no matter if it's in Tennessee or Atlanta or now in Pittsburgh, it's never been good. Like his play calling or his usage of players or him finding ways to get the offense in the end zone has never been good or consistent because I also look at the Commanders game. They were 3-4 in the red zone. But ever since then, they've just been very inefficient. It's just weird. And it's one of those things where this offense got to clean that up in some way. And I think a lot of the ways to fix that is the personnel that Arthur Smith utilizes in the red zone. Why are we seeing Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin in the red zone? That makes no sense. You trade for Mike Williams. He got the game winner versus the Commanders. Ever since then, he has not had a single target.
No.
How?
It's been 2 games. He has not seen one.
I
don't know
target.
why. You trade away a 5th rounder for this upcoming draft class. And for some reason, they're not scheming Mike Williams up in a predicament where Russ could target him, where he could be utilized in the red zone. Instead, you utilizing a guy like Calvin Austin in the red zone, who's not exactly the most efficient red zone guy to look forward to, or even that, the 2-point try after the Calvin Austin touchdown, Russ's only read was Cordell Patterson. Who's, 34 years old, and at this point of his career, a third-string backup running back.
And I'm sorry, Cordell Patterson has never been a jump ball guy.
No.
It's the most mind-boggling thing to think
He's always the Arthur Smith guy, but that's the problem.
Yes.
Why are we utilizing Patterson in that predicament to extend the lead? Why are we not utilizing a guy like Mike Williams in that factor since you brought him in? They were scorching the earth for a wide receiver this whole time, and when they finally have one, all of a sudden, we don't want to use him?
Or better yet, George Pickens. We know he's a 50-50 god. You trust him in those situations. You got Pat Frymuth, who has all of his touchdown receptions in the red zone. You got Darnell Washington, who's a gigantuan freak, right? You got all these guys that you could use in the red zone, and I don't think we've seen any targets from any of those guys in the red zone in weeks.
How often do we see
outside of the Darnell pass that Russ threw that was intercepted? That's it.
But how often do we see Pat Frymuth utilized in the red zone?
Better yet, how often do we see Pat Frymuth utilized in general?
Every game, he sees maximum 3 targets.
It's criminal.
Why are we having Muth only see 3 targets a game?
We just extended this guy, and I feel like it was a good contract seeing the market. And granted, he had a good game versus the Browns.
Yeah, he did.
He had one of his better games of the season, I'd say. But, throughout the past couple of weeks, it's just he hasn't really been utilized to the best of his ability. And I feel like in my opinion, he's a top 10 tight end or receiving tight end. I think he's a field stretcher. He can get up the seams. He's a yak guy at the same time. Utilize him. You're paying him. You have him at your disposal. He runs a ton of tight end personnel, which is a good thing because it's led to a lot of success in the run game. But the tight ends in general don't see a lot of targets in the passing game, which is confusing to me because Arthur Smith is incredibly tight end heavy, but he can't find ways to get the ball to his tight ends in a successful way. I look at teams like the Ravens and the way they use Likely and Andrews. Why can't we use them like that? I look at other teams that use a lot of 12 and 13 personnel. It is so successful for them. Why can't Arthur Smith utilize those guys in a similar manner? You can motion Frymuth in the slot. You can have him motion up in the middle of the field, use his targets. We've seen the same thing for Darnell Washington. It's like we've seen glimpses, but they're not getting as much targets as I think they should. I think that would be a big success and a big reason why we could find ways to get down the field and especially get in the end zone. But Arthur Smith does utilize his guys in the red zone on the field as much as I think he should.
Yeah.
It's confusing to me. I mean, you look at Pat Freiermuth, the most yards he's had all season was 59 last week.
He should definitely be utilized
for a team that doesn't have a number 2 wide receiver. Why is this guy not treated like one?
Yeah, if you're not looking to use Mike Williams or scheme up the routes for the guy, why would you not utilize your tight ends in that fashion?
I don't understand. So I think his personnel usage, not just in the red zone, but all over the field, is very confusing. And I think in the past couple of weeks, Arthur Smith, he's been just a little too predictable in his play calls, especially if you look at those 4th down plays that the Steelers tried versus the Browns. That Justin Fields play, first of all, it was the exact same formation they tried to run the drive prior, but they didn't run it because of a Darnell Washington false start. So the next drive, they said, let's just run it back, and it was so predictable because the defense already saw that formation previously.
The Browns were very aware of what was going to happen.
And that's not the first time that Arthur Smith has used Justin Fields as a runner on 4th downs this season.
No.
So teams see that. They see Fields on the field. They know he's getting the ball. It's so easy to scheme against.
Yeah. It's like already like you're having Justin Fields be the predictable player right now.
Right.
The way you're utilizing him, yes, it's coming off as predictable.
You're making him one-dimensional, and that's not good because he was your starting quarterback for the first couple weeks of the season, your first essentially third of the season. He can throw the ball. Like, utilize that, especially in the red zone. I think we got to use Justin Fields a little more in the red zone, but don't make it too obvious. Don't make it overly predictable. It's just one of those things where you look at what he has at his disposal. I don't think he's utilizing the talent the way he should. You look at Mike Williams and what he did versus the Commanders and his utilization the past couple of weeks. Not a single target. Van Jefferson is out snapping him for some reason. And if he's not, he's still seeing targets over Mike Williams. Calvin Austin, listen, I'm not going to complain about Calvin Austin seeing any snaps because he, out of all the other wide receivers this season, has stepped up the most. He's not putting up the most mind-blowing stats, but is he making plays? Is he getting in the end zone? Absolutely. So I'm not going to have any issues with Calvin Austin seeing any playing time, especially if he keeps making plays. But in the red zone, I don't think Calvin Austin is the greatest receiver to use or the best receiver to use when you're in the red zone.
Now, I won't consider Austin to be the go-to or one of your go-tos for the red zone. No, that's for a jump ball guy like Mike Williams. He has the size, the tangibles, you know. Like if Smith were just able to give these guys the proper routes to run and just give these guys cushion into the end zone, because I feel like everything's just kind of jammed up if you look at the all-22 footage.
Yeah.
Everything's just jammed up. They don't have cushion, and defenders, man, they just read that stuff like a book.
There's no space in between these routes, man. There's not. And I'm not just talking like in the red zone specifically. You know, you look at the jump balls that Russ has thrown, the moon balls, right, that he's thrown to Calvin and he's thrown to Van Jefferson. You know, they've come down with a couple, but not as often as maybe they should. And I look at specifically that Commanders game. The only 2 guys that could come down with moon balls was Pickens and Williams. And then they still want to draw up plays for Austin and Jefferson to try to make those catches when you know for a fact that if you're going to throw a ball like that, if you're going to scheme the play to get them the ball, maybe you should probably utilize or target Pickens or Williams in that situation. It's just he's getting predictable. He's not utilizing the guys the way he should. And Arthur Smith, there's actually some news on Arthur Smith. In case you guys didn't know, Arthur Smith has been named as a potential candidate to replace Mac Brown at North Carolina for the head coaching job. I don't know if he will. There's an interest from Arthur Smith. Apparently, if he were to take the job, if he were to leave and go back to college, all I'm going to say is I would not be upset. Would it be detrimental to the Steelers? I mean, they would have to look for another OC for another season. So perhaps it might be.
Yeah, keep in mind, we signed or hired Arthur Smith to a 3-year deal as the OC. Now, that would not prevent him from going to North Carolina to accept the head coaching job. That's up for him to decide. I don't know what he's thinking or what he could potentially be thinking, but it's his choice. If he were to make it, that's his choice. That's his life. Right. That's his career. And I would wish Arthur Smith nothing but the best of luck. That's his decision for him to make. But then, that's down the road.
But then we would have to look for another OC. And are the Steelers in a situation right now to look for another OC?
I don't know.
Could they do better? Absolutely. Could they be worse? We've seen worse. I don't know who the Steelers could target. I don't know who the Steelers could bring in. All I know is if Arthur Smith does take this head coaching job for North Carolina and they get another OC, I do not have any faith in the world that they will get the proper OC to lead this offense. I think they'll just find another conservative guy. I think Tomlin will just find another guy that will just lead this offense to as basic, as easy as it can be.
What are the odds that they were just to promote from within again, the quarterback coach? What are the odds they do that again? Tom Arth. They still have Mike Sullivan as the senior offensive assistant.
We still got Eddie Faulkner.
So what are the odds that, like they have prior experience calling plays? What are the odds that Tomlin would just be like, hey, we're going to half-ass the coordinator position once again?
I would hope not.
Because keep in mind, they only interviewed 3 candidates. They only interviewed 3 candidates before settling with Arthur Smith. So they didn't really put a huge amount of effort into the offensive coordinator position.
Right.
They just looked at those 3. They looked at, Arthur Smith, he had a great resume before being head coach for Atlanta. Let's just bring him in.
I would not do that. I would not promote within. I would not promote from within. Tomlin didn't want to do that last year or this past offseason.
No, and I can appreciate Tomlin wanting to change it up because he absolutely needed to. He knew he needed to.
And one of his things is he wants someone with experience. Now, we're not going to talk too much about this because I don't think Arthur Smith is going to take the job.
No, deep down, I don't think Arthur Smith leaves. No, I
but
don't.
let's say he does. If there's one guy I want, I will throw one name out there. If you guys have any other names, let us know in the comments. But if there's one other name I would want the Steelers to get, it is Mark Brunell, the quarterback coach for the Detroit Lions. I think he's in line for a offensive coordinator position. I think that entire coaching staff, a lot of those guys are in line for a promotion in some case around the league. So I would like any of those guys to be interviewed for the Steelers. If they want to interview Thomas Brown again, I still think Thomas Brown from the McVay tree is a good option. But I'm not going to look too much into that because I don't think he's going to take the job. I don't think Arthur Smith is leaving. But if he does, I'm not going to be upset about it. But then they would have to look for another offensive coordinator, and I don't have any faith in Tomlin and the Steelers to find the proper guy.
Right.
Or an upgrade at that. So I'd say we're stuck with Arthur Smith, and Arthur Smith, as a coach, as a coordinator, needs to step up. The offense as a whole absolutely needs to execute. Russ needs to be better. Russ needs to be safer with the ball.
And stop holding on to the ball too long and read his assignments properly. You know what I'm saying?
The line absolutely needs to be better.
Oh, without a doubt.
I think our running backs are very efficient when they have lanes or when they're, utilizing the dual threat ability.
And the line blocks for them. Opens up holes for them.
Pickens is incredible. Pickens is very good. Him and Russ has been connecting every week since Russ has stepped in. So no problems from Pickens. I think we need to utilize our tight ends more. And we need to get Williams and Calvin Austin involved more.
Yeah.
Less Van Jefferson, more Mike Williams. More Calvin Austin. I think that's good things for the offense. But Arthur Smith absolutely needs to be better as a coach. He needs to stop being predictable. He needs to stop being basic. And he needs to utilize his targets to the best of their ability. He needs to open up the playbook a little bit. He just needs to be a little more smart.
As well as Mike Tomlin.
The offense as a whole needs to be a lot smarter. And yes, Mike Tomlin as well, because I think one of the big reasons why we lost against the Browns was because of his poor clock management, because of his poor game management.
Yeah.
The timeouts he took and how he accepted the penalty because he thought that, the Browns were just going to
settle for a field goal, right?
Yeah, they weren't going to settle for it. The Browns have nothing to lose. Why would they settle for a field goal on 4th down?
Yeah.
So he wanted to take them back because of distance and try to make it harder for them to make a field goal, which he thought was going to happen, which wasn't, and the Browns still got a 1st down.
Yeah, and to me, to me...
And then he took a timeout after that.
Yeah, and to me, I saw that as Tomlin just underestimating the team and the coaching staff of Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, and that's one of his issues is sometimes he underestimates the teams he goes up against, and it's as simple as this. He plays down to competition. And that starts from the top. Mike Tomlin has a history of that, and I want to give credit to Mike Tomlin first. He's led this team to 8-3. He improved the quarterback situation. He did improve the OC situation. He's leading this team very well. He is I don't want to say a front runner, but he's one of the guys that's being talked about for Coach of the Year. I don't think he's going to win. I don't think he's ever going to win, but he's being in those talks.
No, like there's been a lot of good things to come out from the season and still good things to come. There is.
Oh, I agree 100% because I still believe this team is different.
And the Steelers, they're sitting at 8-3, they still sit at a very comfortable spot. They're 8-3. That's nothing to, shrug your shoulders off and whatnot. They're still sitting in a good spot. They're still first place in AFC North.
Yeah, 8-3 is a very good record, and I still feel like they have a lot of games to win, and I feel like the majority of their games they're going to win is the division because they went 5-1 in said division last year with 3 quarterbacks, and I still think the Steelers are the only improved team in the entire AFC North. You look at all those other teams, and they've regressed in a certain way, from defense, from player personnel, from coaching, because of their penalties, whatever. I think the Steelers are probably the most or the only improved team in the entire AFC North.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you look at the past number of years, around this stretch, I don't want to turn a blind eye to it, around this stretch, they tend to fold. They tend to collapse.
And that's because of the issues that, were just overlapping from game to game, the issues that you notice even when the Steelers were winning some games, their 5-game win streak, you notice that some of the issues were just overlapping game by game. And then in that Browns game, it just overwhelmed. They just piled up. And it was one of the reasons why we end up failing and losing.
Absolutely. And perhaps that Browns win was an eye-opener for the team. Like, yeah,
I can only hope that that's what it is.
Yes.
That it humbled the coaching staff, it humbled the players, it humbled this team in general.
But if you, as a Steelers fan, are fearful that this is going to be the start of a collapse or a start of a losing streak, I don't blame you. I don't agree. I don't believe that because I think this team is different. We have seen it in games past this year. We've seen it all year that this team is just, they can come back from deficits. They can put points on the board. They can win the turnover battle. The leadership, the locker room mentality is night and day compared to last year and the year before that. This team is different. I think a lot of it has to do with Russ and a lot of it has to do with the way coaching leads this team. But at the same time, the way coaching has led this team towards the bottom half of the second half of the season in recent years doesn't have a good track record. You look at 2018, that was a collapse. 2019, I know we didn't have Ben, but we sat at a good point and we collapsed then. 2020, less said the better.
Massive collapse, yeah.
Less said the better. Last year, is just one of those things where last year, yeah, we had a rough quarterback situation. Mason came in and saved the season. Saved the Steelers, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have Russ right now.
No.
So I want to give a huge shout and huge thank you to Mason Rudolph.
Rudolph is the Steelers savior.
But at the end of the day, the track record for this team and folding towards this part of the season, again, I want to go back to history. History shows and history proves that sometimes it'll repeat itself. And the one common denominator in all of that is Mike Tomlin.
And this is why that the next 6 games are a crucial time for the Pittsburgh Steelers to showcase how they're going to prep for these matchups, how they're going to be able to go out there and perform, how the coordinators are going to do and draw up plays and assign the players to succeed to the best of their ability, how they're going to utilize the talent in the right predicaments. This is a crucial time for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Right now, they're sitting very comfortably. They're sitting very fondly, fine.
But just because you're sitting comfortable doesn't mean you should be conservative.
No. You shouldn't settle for that.
You should not be complacent. This team can only be better. This team can only get better.
You should only want to strive for more, to better yourself. Learn from the mistakes, get back on the practice field, get back in the film room and just work on the negatives.
It is all about how coaching leads us. And I have always said that the biggest difference between us and all the other teams in the league, especially the greater ones, has been coaching. We've seen it in years past. We've seen it in matchups past. You look at the games versus the Chiefs. You look at games versus like even the Texans last year or the Niners, right? Those are some really good teams. Those are some arguable elite teams when they're fully healthy. And you look at how we approach those games. You look at our coaching. It's just I think our coaching is a lot different compared to those teams. So it all matters on how coaching leads this team. It really does. Players got to execute. Players got to be utilized to the best of their ability. But it all starts with coaching. And it starts at the top with Mike Tomlin, and then it follows down to the coordinators. Everyone's got to step up at this point because this is the peak of the schedule. This is the toughest it's ever going to get. It doesn't get any easier. You have an absolute gauntlet. We know this. But if you want to say like the Browns was the last easy game because of the Browns or just because of, what the Steelers have done to the Browns in the last, 20-something years?
Right, of course.
But even the Browns beat us. So now that's kind of behind you, and now you got an entire gauntlet ahead. So it's all a matter of how are they going to approach it. How is coaching going to lead? How is the team going to be just – how is the team going to be led by not only coaching but even Russ and Watt and all the other leaders on this team?
Yeah.
I know a lot of these guys are hungry. A lot of these guys are playing with a chip on his shoulder. I know Watt is. I know Watt wants that playoff win, man. He hasn't had one yet.
Doesn't have one yet.
Russ, he's definitely playing with a chip on his shoulder. Najee's still playing with a chip on his shoulder. A lot of these guys, man, got a lot to prove. So that's why I say this team is different because I think a lot of these players on this team, especially the leaders, just have a lot to achieve for themselves, for the team, for whatever, right? They have a lot to achieve. I think this team as a whole is different compared to years prior because we've seen it in games past. We've seen it in recent weeks, as a matter of fact, which gives me a lot of positive, a lot of good feeling that the Steelers will approach this end of the season, this stretch of the season, in the best way they can. If you have fear, if you have doubt about this team, about this stretch, that you think it's going to be a losing streak or it's going to be the start of a collapse again, I don't blame you because history says it, and Mike Tomlin has done it before, a couple times actually. But I just think this team is different. I think the leadership is different. I think the team is just a lot better than what they should be.
Yeah.
So it's all about how they approach it, and I'm hoping that they approach it the best way they can, and they go in to this stretch knowing, hey, we sit first place right now. We can't let up right now. We got to be better. We can't be complacent where we're at. Let's just keep winning football games, and let's go out and be the best we can. Let's be the best version of ourselves. Let's be the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Absolutely, man.
That's what I'm praying for, and that's what I'm banking on, and that is what I'm confident in because I do like this team. I think this team is very good. It's as healthy as it can be. We're getting Highsmith back soon. We're going to get Corey Trice soon. You know, a lot of good factors about this team. It's just coaching has to be better. Coaching has to step it up, and they got to be less basic. They got to be a little more open to utilizing certain guys. It really comes down to that. So, at the end of the day, coaching is going to lead this team to whatever it's going to lead this team, and I'm hoping it leads us to a very good stretch, a very good record, and hopefully, dare I say, a playoff victory. And if we can get that, a playoff push, because I know this team's capable of it.
But in order to do that, they got to take it one game at a time, and it starts with Cincinnati.
It starts with Cincinnati. They continue to sit at first place, and they cannot let up.
No.
They cannot risk to lose versus Sunday, versus the Bengals, or any game at this point
They can't
in
get
the division.
They can't get complacent.
They cannot. They did versus the Browns. Hopefully that's a wake-up call.
Yeah.
And that's all they need to be like, that was a little too close, man. Like, the Ravens are breathing down your necks.
Mm-hmm.
Can't let up right now.
No.
So it's all about how the Steelers approach this, man. So let us know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. How do you guys think the Steelers are going to approach this stretch of the season? How many wins do you guys think the Steelers get for the rest of the season? If you guys have any record predictions from week to week, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear you guys' opinions. That's just how we feel as we approach, as we look head on into the toughest part of the season now. How real are the Steelers? This is the true, real test for the Steelers. This is a real, true test for everybody. What team are we going to get? We're going to see very shortly. Time will tell, and we don't have to wait too much longer, man. I'm hoping we get a really good Steelers team to come out of that Browns loss because we need it. They need it.
Yep.
I think they still have a lot to prove, and I think that's exactly their motivation. So at the end of the day, here we go, Steelers. I want to thank you guys for tuning in, man. Again, happy Thanksgiving to you guys. Shout out to BetUS Sportsbook and consider for sponsoring this video. Again, take advantage of that 150% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,000 and 125% on your next two deposits when you use the promo code YouTube150 when signing up at BetUS.com today. Take advantage of all those great perks from our great friends over at BetUS. Take advantage of the Thursday Night Football games or the Thursday games today, the Thanksgiving games. So enjoy those festivities. Enjoy the football. Enjoy the family. Enjoy the fun. And, of course, enjoy the food. So, again, happy Thanksgiving to you guys. We appreciate you guys for watching. At the end of the day, here we go, Steelers. And let's approach this with a lot of fire under us. So here we go, Steelers, man.
And as always, like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you later.
Peace!